I'm really fascinated by search ads in TikTok and how that's becoming a big platform, and it's taking away traffic from Google for like how-to videos. And I certainly, speaking from experience, can say that I've definitely searched for things on TikTok that historically I might have looked on Google for. I wonder if Google's worried about that. Is, from your perspective, Alex, are you seeing a decrease in traffic for like how-to videos?
So this is off the Rise at 7 study that they did of the 100 search terms that supposedly get more search volume than on Google. So I think Google's attitude to these things very much is that they tend to kind of make a big splash and then die out slowly once Google figures out how to deal with them. I think in TikTok's case, it's actually probably a little bit different. So I think the stereotypical view of TikTok is it's kind of a young platform, Gen Z, young creators. Actually, we're starting to see that the demographic on TikTok is shifting, and older audiences are starting to use it more as well, specifically for search purposes. So it's still predominantly a younger audience. 47% of TikTok are under 30, and almost the entire creator base is under 30 as well. We are starting to see around about 12% of TikTok users now, for instance, are men over 35. So it's starting to broaden out, and it's starting to be a viable platform to address whatever audience you're actually looking to go after. I think it's really early days actually for the search ads format on TikTok, and I would be reluctant to place any premium on any studies until we've done some experimenting ourselves, which we're looking to do at the beginning of next year. So at the moment, I think it has promise. It's to be seen whether or not it's going to go the way of, say, Snapchat, which was going to be the big challenger to Google and then kind of faded away into its own key demographics. And we do know that Google is planning big changes over the next couple of years as well, with search generative experience coming in. So the nature of search is going to change through Google, and how that impacts, say, younger demographics coming through who are maybe looking for a more interactive experience with search, that remains to be seen. But it's important to remember that Google are not standing still on this. They are making big changes to the platform to adapt and respond to what TikTok's currently doing. Simon, I don't know if you guys have had any exposure to TikTok ads, search ads yet?
Well, it started not too long ago. I think one thing that we're very interested about it is how can it help us to... I don't think it's that much about replacing Google search, because it's used slightly different, but YouTube search. So many people go to YouTube and they search for how to do things, they search for reviews. So I think that's more like how people are starting to use it, because TikTok is more similar to YouTube than anything else. YouTube starting demand gen, YouTube Shorts and all of that is probably a way to answer to that same need for short form video, and just not having to, because that's the thing, people want like easy, quick, snackable content to answer questions. So when you, like, I now go to TikTok more often, because in YouTube you just get like, oh, here's the 10-minute way to do something, and you just don't, it's not that common that you take all that time. But you go to TikTok and you have like in 30 seconds, 1 minute, you have like a whole set of a routine, advice, everything really easy. So definitely it does have a place, and it's the way that people will be looking for information nowadays. But yeah, it's more about how YouTube can adapt and how they can replace that or compete with that with YouTube Shorts, which are probably doing well.
What do you think are the key differences creatively between kind of the Shorts format and the TikTok format? Are they kind of identical, or are there different aspects to each?
It's very similar. I think all platforms nowadays are just integrating the same thing. Like you go to Instagram Reels, you go to YouTube Shorts and TikTok, and it's all just stuff that is based on the algorithm, and people just respond very quickly to the first 3 seconds and like 1 minute max. So I guess Instagram is probably not that much about searching as maybe YouTube has been traditionally, and how TikTok is trying to position themselves. But in terms of the content, is the same thing. I mean, if you have a strategy to develop like TikTok content for search, then you can just distribute that across Reels and YouTube Shorts very easily. I believe, yeah. Yes.
Very good.
Bella, what do you search for on TikTok?
What do I search for?
Why do you go to TikTok instead of Google?
I'm usually, from a fashion standpoint, I'm searching for like work outfits, Christmas party outfits recently. Like I was going through different sort of like, I guess, feeds for specific hashtags. So I'll go to search and be searching for what I believe is a hashtag. But now I'm curious how a search ad would appear in the TikTok search bar. Presumably it would appear sort of as a drop down, or am I completely wrong in how that's showing up?
What, the TikTok search results, you mean?
Where the search ad sits in TikTok.
Yeah, I mean, basically they just they look like videos, but they're not randomly served to you. They're served to you in response to a query. So you say, I want to learn about how to invest property in the UK. And I think this is a dry one, but actually is one of the ones that have been used significantly. And then you see videos of people that have created content around that, plus maybe someone, giving financial advice and selling their services. So it just integrates into the experience, which I think is what they're trying to do. Just keep it very organic. So it would just be, you would see that it's sponsored, but it would look like any other video.
So is it when you're setting up the ads and you're deciding like the targeting, those sorts of things, is that where it's different from like a management perspective for you, say?
Yeah, it's basically just like a tick box. So you say, do you want to expand this targeting to search? So there's not really that much insight, which is a bit annoying. But the ideal scenario is that we can really focus on the keywords and start using it like we would do on YouTube or we would do in Pinterest, which is really like people that are searching for X and Y. So for now, it's more like I'm interested in this, so therefore it just finds keywords that maybe reflect that and serves if someone is searching. But yeah, there's not like a massive world of it. It's very early stages, but definitely is how people are using the platform, and that's why they're investing in it.
Is TikTok a cheaper advertising platform than Meta?
Yeah, I would say so. I think TikTok is trying to compete, so it's cheaper. So Meta is a much more established platform that offers very good returns, and they and lots of more advertisers are really confident in the platform, so invest more. While TikTok, many people come in, drop out. It's trickier to get it to work or to understand the impact of it. So it's more trusted by like larger advertisers that are more confident in investing that money. And so there's more space. There's a lot of space, inventory space, which means that the cost per impression is much lower. Yes.
Do you think there's a element of people being a bit anxious to advertise with TikTok, mainly because it sort of came from nowhere, and there's people are hesitant to use it? Are you seeing or hearing that? Is it a concern, or people quite willing if the budget's there to start advertising through TikTok?
There's a bit of a mix. I think some people feel something new and shiny and they want to be in there, and it's actually managing that expectation because people just want to not miss out. But then there's the other half that are like, oh, that's only for kids, and my target audience is not there, which is also a mistake because, as Alex was mentioning, there's a massive proportion of people over 30 that are using it. So even though it's mostly younger than other platforms, it's still a platform that is being used by 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds. And I think that the other thing is measurement. So Meta is really experienced at understanding the results of the campaigns, measuring events of that people complete on the website, and TikTok is also able, but I believe they're not quite there as Meta is, and that means people maybe invest money and don't know how to really measure that back and justify it.
I think as well, in terms of it as like the viability of it as a long-term advertising channel, one of the things that YouTube's already successfully done is monetized creator content. So if you're a creator for YouTube, there are simple, easy ways to make money. YouTube will reward you. They have different tiers in terms of number of views that you get on your videos. TikTok doesn't seem to have solved that creator monetization problem yet. So in order to make it a viable platform, you need to have that base of creators who are actually creating good content for you on a regular basis. And it remains to be seen whether or not they can actually make that a sustainable business model for themselves or not. Because if you don't have the content, nobody's going to be looking at the ads. And it's also a question as well of TikTok seems to have completely mastered the ability to figure out what people want to see next. So they've nailed engagement like no other platform. But what people are starting to realize is if you just give people what they want, they get bored quite quickly. So it's a question of, can they actually strike that balance between giving you content that you're definitely engaged with, but also with that discovery element on top of it? And can they keep that balance right to keep the user base engaged? Because by its nature, it's a very transient, temporary format. Whereas with YouTube, you have a whole repository of longer form videos that you can monetize that are actually useful to people in a different way. So there's a lot of question marks around whether or not it's actually a kind of long-term viable platform, but it's certainly something that we're interested in exploring.
TikTok actually used to have a creator fund where they would like monetize content and support creators, but they've actually stopped it as of I think last month or November even.
Why?
Well, exactly. It suggests they're possibly working on something. They also recently signed a contract with Royal Mail to help with their UK fulfillment capabilities on TikTok Shop. So just suggests there's something in the works there.
The creator fund was always a bit fishy because you needed like
Certain amount of followers,
Yeah.
certain amount of engagement, yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And then even if you were on the creator fund and then you left, you couldn't get back on if you didn't have a certain number of views in like the last 30 days or something.
Just anecdotally, Bella, would you recommend people use TikTok for searching? Do you find that the results you get are useful enough to say, actually, you should be trying TikTok instead of Google for some of these searches you're doing?
Yeah, I do. I think typically when I'm shopping and I'm using TikTok more for that to give me inspiration, if I can't find what I'm looking for in Google Shopping, I don't look at search ads. They might be there, but I don't know whether I'm going to find what I want. So I'll go through like 8 of the Google's pages looking for something in shopping, but I will never scroll unless it's something like Rightmove, for example. I'll click on a search ad. But if I'm looking for boots or jackets or brown coat, it's Google Shopping, and I will go on until I like max out those results. Otherwise, and then I'll move to TikTok Shopping. I'll be like, not TikTok Shopping, TikTok search, and search for videos that give me inspiration to find maybe. Then I can go direct to that person's website or brand's website or whatever.
I think that is the dilemma for Google, is that the text-based search results have been such a moneymaker for them for so many decades now, and they're starting to feel a bit stale. And there used to be that slogan, page one or dead, where if you weren't on page one, the user would move on to another way to search for things. And I think it's got to the stage now where it's almost kind of result one or dead, where you are, if you're not instantly finding it on a text ad or the top of the organic listings, you are moving on either to Google Shopping or onto another platform to find what you need next.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting with the SGE stuff coming in next year and how they're going to be reformatting that search results page to make it more conversational, to see whether or not people will actually hang around. If you're able to ask Google a question in the search box and then it presents you with images, with kind of Wikipedia results, with rich content, and then you can have a conversation off the back of that. Is actually going to promote engagement on the search results page, or is it actually going to make it even harder to find what you want? So I think that's going to be the main challenge for them over the next couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. My mentality is, if it's not in like those sort of first few sections of page one, it doesn't exist. Like, it's either there or it's not. So that does make it obviously far more challenging for all those companies out there fighting for that first place. I just wonder how many people think like that. But then I feel like that segues on really nicely to how Gen Z killed the purchase funnel. Oh, heavy subject.
Heavy.
And I know we love the messy middle. I mean, I'm a big fan. But if they've killed the purchase funnel, what does it look like now?
I was a bit confused with the whole thing. The premise of...
Confused with the purchase funnel, or?
Well, with that headline, I feel like it's just. I mean, the research is very interesting, and it's really interesting to understand what Jen said is how they're behaving and what they value and everything. But I mean, what's the difference? I mean, people are purchasing, and the thing is, the article is mostly about. The research is mostly about brand loyalty, and brand loyalty will transcend the purchase or the purchasing funnel. As a paid media agency, we are focused mostly on acquiring new customers, and the purchase is like the main thing that we want to do. So if people are purchasing, then they go through us for a few steps, and then they need to reassure themselves enough to purchase. So the research is saying, that Jen said actually purchases first, and then they go on research, which is a very strange thing. First of all, of course, they obviously have enough reassurance to go and purchase, right? So the funnel is still there. We give them enough information for them to be reassured. Then after that, they may go and look for more information like diversity or, is this company actually ethical enough for me and stuff like that. Well, maybe then those things weren't really that important to make the purchase in the first place because they did purchase first and then they went to look for sustainability or so. It's just like I think there are many things that are important for nurturing a customer and turning them into brand advocates, but it doesn't mean that the purchase funnel has changed. Purchase funnel is still about convincing people to make that action, and people will still go through a few. Is it nice enough? Is it beautiful enough? And if people put the credit card in and they purchased it, then they trust the brand enough, right? So that's the same process of doing that. The funnel has been changing for many years. It's not the same, and the messy middle that we use is really a way of how that's not a linear process. It goes up and down. People just move around, and then they look at things in different stages. But that's not a new thing. That's not Jen said. That's been happening since 2005 or something. So yeah, I'm a bit. I don't know. I don't think it's such a dramatic thing. Jen said is. Yeah, changing everything.
I think it's the power of naming something. I mean, we have all these data points about demographics, behavior, interests. We call it Gen Z, but ultimately all that is an age bracket. And you wouldn't simply just target an age bracket. And I think it's also very, very easy to take survey data and assume that is how customers actually behave. Yeah. So David Ogilvy said... I wrote it down for today because it was really good. He said customers don't know what drives their behavior. So if you ask customers what is actually driving their decision making, they will give you a very plausible answer that has zero value. And I think with a lot of the Gen Z surveys that are done and what drives your purchase behavior, it's a lot about what they'd like to think drives their purchase behavior, just like any other age bracket. Whereas what's actually making the difference is the thing Simon's talking about, kind of around, is the product good? Are you actually getting a purchase experience that you find useful? And that's kind of backed up with all sorts of studies. I know BBH Labs did one a while back where they came up with this new metric called social cohesion, which is effectively a way of bucketing people into data pools based on things outside of demographic information. So they found that actually being an Orangina drinker made you twice as cohesive with other people who like Orangina compared to, say, their age bracket or where they grew up. So there's different ways to group people that don't rely simply on saying, that person's 26 or that person's 42. It's not a very accurate way from the testing we've done and the messaging that we've trialed to actually get people to commit to buying from you. It might generate interest, but targeting any group of people is going to generate a certain level of interest. So I think it's a nice thing to talk about, but I don't think, at least from a search perspective, it doesn't drive much of our decision making in terms of how we think about targeting people.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a good thing to consider. Like, people really value certain things, and they're willing to take on that brand and really create a relationship with that brand and go and talk to other people about it. And that's something that has always existed. And I think more important nowadays, probably because people engage with smaller brands and they go and they really want to feel like this brand is good and it aligns with my values. But those things are not always critical for the purchase to happen. So it's just, we're talking about two different things. Like, to purchase, I think the funnel is still there. You need to educate people. You need to give them exactly what they need to make that purchase. And once that's finished, there's going to be other things that are going to make that user an advocate and go and speak to other people about it. But that's always been the case. I don't think that's a new thing.
I wonder if it's got something. I wonder if someone's just written an article on the basis that someone, because I think I do this. I'll buy something I like and I'll spend ages looking for it, and then I'll see it and I'll be like, that's it, and I buy it, but I haven't done much research into the brand before purchasing. And then let's say it's going to take 2-3 days to arrive, so I'm now impatient, and everyone wants everything yesterday. But to help bridge that gap, I start researching the brand to learn more about them, read their story, see where they started, see where things have grown, and all those extra bits that are always available but don't necessarily help my decision-making process before that point. I wonder if that article is based on the way that someone is doing all that research after they've bought that product.
Yeah, it seems like. And I also feel identified with that. Like, you go to Instagram, you start looking at everything they've posted, what they represent. You want to also reassure yourself, like, okay, I bought from this brand and I actually like them. And then you didn't make a mistake. And that's a very natural thing to do. So yeah, that's completely valid. I think it's just that you're now in a separate stage. The original funnel is from discovery all the way to purchase. After that, there's like an inverse funnel where you maybe grow in your relationship with that brand. So that's part of that, and doesn't mean it's changed though. That's kind of my point. But yeah, it's completely valid and it's true. So yeah,
I think a lot of it's also driven by can we stop talking about millennials now? Everyone's tired of talking about millennials, so let's choose Gen Z for the next set of conversation.
Is anybody else being blasted by that cold air?
No.
mine is on my feet. I don't have socks. Well, I have short socks, so
You have no socks on?
I have ankle socks.
Pop socks? Do you have the ones which are exposed to just go around the toe and the heel?
It's invisible socks.
Did you research them on TikTok?
Or Temu?
Researched on TikTok, bought on Temu.
No, honestly, the TikTok thing, I think is great because, I remember I had like this injury on my Achilles tendon. I was like, I need to go to YouTube to, wait a second, what if I got TikTok and it's going to save me like 15 minutes of, waiting for the guy to start even speaking. And yeah, effectively I went to TikTok and it was like 1 minute and it's like, just do this, perfect. So.
What I think is interesting as well is I've got a friend who used to be a really successful PR for a finance company, and she was doing a survey last year, and she said to me, would you take financial advice from TikTok? She was like doing a general survey, and I was like, no way, absolutely not. Like, that's so stupid. I'd obviously check credible sources. I'm better than that sort of thing. And then actually, I think I would now, like not in terms of like buying stocks or getting a mortgage or something, but I think I would quickly search mortgage rates increases or something, and I would search that on TikTok rather than on Google on the basis that...
Yeah, you need to question everything anyway. I mean, even the official sources. So it's just, there's lots of people that are really smart and they're talking on social media, and they're worth listening. Others are stupid, and it's hard to know, but you do have to have common sense. It's just easy to get some good content quickly, and
That's really curious. So is that because it's done such a good job of keeping you in the app that you've become comfortable with it? Or is it because you are trusting Google less? Or is it because the quality of the content is high enough for you to, like, what's driving it?
That it's sort of a mix. I feel like the people that I would be clicking on TikTok, I feel like I can recognise where they're coming from, who they are. Even if I question their expertise, I can go, this person looks like me. No, it's similar to social class to me, whatever, XYZ, I can understand the context they have. Whereas if I'm on Google and it's like a bigger corporation, maybe I could go to them for credibility, but maybe where it's a broader search result, it's not as nuanced, or it's not maybe as explained in as much detail, or the exact unique perspective I'm looking for isn't immediately available, whereas I could click on someone on TikTok that's exactly XYZ what I'm looking for, and I could select that straight away without having to go through loads of search results.
How do you guys deal with kind of learning periods for creatives when you've got so much changeover in such a short period of time?
Yeah, so we have it's a big question with clients. Clients get really nervous about this sometimes, and we try to protect the learning process, and we want to keep campaigns that that finish the learning how to say, like that, complete that learning phase. But personally, I'm not one that thinks that Facebook is, and Meta generally is really that bad at just starting to do really well from the very beginning, especially if you have good conversion volume. So we're not that concerned. We don't want to do too many changes too often, because it will kind of just spiral a little bit and be very, very uncertain in how what you get on a day-to-day basis. But we're not that concerned. I guess with search is a bit more like, if you mess with it, it's just going to take like, much longer. So yeah, definitely much more comfortable than you guys.
It depends as well. It sort of comes down to knowing your audience, because if an ad is totally on the mark, exactly what's popular right now, it'll pick up and it'll get out of learning much quicker. Facebook obviously learns based on data points. The more data points it gets, the quicker it learns. So if it's a really good ad, creative is exactly right for the season, whatever, it will learn quicker and it will be efficient. If it's an ad that's a little bit wishy-washy, the algorithm finds it hard to identify it, and then it'll be slower to learn. So the speed of learning can vary, the effectiveness of ads can vary. It just comes down to knowing your customers and knowing what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you have a strong proposition, it will just pick up right away, and the algorithm will very quickly understand who to target and who to expand to. So yeah, certainly is less of an issue. We still want to try to bucket all those changes into, like, okay, today we make all these changes, all the budget changes, and then we try to modify changes in small intervals rather than like massive swings. But it's mostly precautionary, just to make sure it doesn't really mess with things.
That reminds me, actually, have Meta told you when that daily budget change is kicking in, where they can average the spend out?
Yeah, that was a bit scary, because they just came before Black Friday, and they're like saying, oh, by the way, we may spend 75% more whenever we want. And I don't believe that's really kicked in. We're getting notifications if it is, so it's probably going to start more in January. The team's a bit nervous, but we're also talking about how search has been dealing with this stuff for a really long time, and that eventually it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I would be very interested to know, Alex, if you guys see like one day suddenly spend is massive and nothing is really coming off the back of it. It's normally kind of linked to actually evidence, like conversions coming in with that spend, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, generally it's pretty good. I think one of the biggest shifts is definitely moving away from, say, daily trade. So prior to this budget averaging has gone on for quite a few years now, but prior to that, it was fairly commonplace to have daily conversations with clients. How much do we want to ramp up spend by? How much do we want to cut back by? Those conversations have had to go away through necessity, really. So kind of managing budgets with the weekly spend being your key target. And even with the daily averages shifting about, like you said, it is fairly reliable to understand where the kind of overspends are going to come in on those weekly budget targets fairly reliably. So I think it's one of those things that it'll just take a few weeks for us to understand how the platform treats those different spend averages, and then it'll be fairly straightforward to control, really.
Yeah, I think it's hopefully it will just surprise us in a positive way, and just suddenly like, oh, yesterday actually we spent another £5,000 and we saw loads of conversions. And
she did say as well that it will balance out over a 7-day period.
Yeah.
So if it spends loads on a Wednesday, by Friday it will balance out, or whatever, Sunday.
Yeah, I think anything that just takes away a bit of the control that we aim to have to know that we're managing things, and things are not like just taking off suddenly by themselves is always going to be a bit controversial. But we know that is work for search, and we just need to forecast and understanding that there is more of a variation in how the platform is going to spend that money.
I think as well, just kind of a sneak peek of our thoughts for next year, but we've definitely seen that there's been kind of the activation and performance side of things now. There's a very kind of clear best practice way for us to do these things, and we understand it really well. And I think this year our focus has been very much on how do we really kind of supercharge our creative proposition, and how do we get that in a really good place for social, so we can now start mapping that onto the search activity that we have for our clients. And I think the third thing that we're going to try and bring in next year is this idea of brand growth. So balancing kind of the weekly trading concerns and the need to have profitable activity going on a regular kind of consistent basis, alongside that longer term strategic idea of growing your brand and using creative across your channels and using different views of data to understand how to do that whilst maintaining that kind of day-to-day control that you're talking about. I think it's very exciting potential to use creative to tie all of these channels together in a really meaningful way next year that's going to drive that longer term growth for the brands that we work with.
Yeah, definitely. What we're doing in some platforms like Instagram and the whole kind of move to Reels is nailing that and getting that right means that very easily we can move across platforms and start leveraging other placements like the Google placements now in Demand Gen and YouTube Shorts and TikTok. So there's the idea is to really have a more integrated handle on how we distribute creative across platforms and manage those objectives. Because some platforms will be better for that top of funnel, for awareness and building that brand all the way down to other kinds of placements. So definitely more strategic about it rather than just performance based. I think there needs to be also an element of how we're going to manage platforms like TikTok. There's going to be an expectations to get purchases and ROAS out of it, but also what are the other things that we're doing there that may be helping other channels like search, for example, and how it's going to aid discovery, basically.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we've been doing this year as well is just kind of looking into the third-party options that are out there in terms of attribution, looking at things like MMM as well, and kind of the conclusion that we're getting to towards the end of this year is actually, unless you're dealing with kind of six-figure budgets on a weekly basis, that kind of stuff is a lot less impactful than just focusing on things like absolutely getting the best possible creative to the correct audiences, and kind of the channel mix works itself out if you allow creative to dictate where the performance is coming from. So definitely that kind of creative led approach is how we're seeing defining budgets per channel next year and understanding where the key engagement points are coming from. Can I do some more stats? Have we had enough stats? Do we need more stats? How many stats do you need? Shoptimised Performance Max study. So they looked across all of their accounts at how Performance Max is working versus manual shopping. So very stat heavy, but I'm coming at you.
Okay.
So 85% of spend is currently going through Performance Max campaigns.
Did you say 85%?
85%.
Crikey.
Sorry, is this from Shopify, you said?
So this is from Shoptimised.
Right.
Similar but different. 28% of campaigns that are being managed manually through Shoptimised had no changes made to them in the last 30 days. So for everyone concerned about control and visibility, you might want to take a look at who is managing your activity and making sure they're actually taking advantage of that visibility and control.
Sorry, this is for November, or?
I cannot remember the date range.
Cut.
Recent, very recent. It was out last
Just
week.
if no one changed anything in November, then wow. But probably not.
ROAS is up 44% Performance Max versus manual shopping. So if there's anyone out there on the fence about whether they should be moving from manual shopping over to Performance Max, the answer is absolutely yes. For the visibility and control you lose, a lot of which we've managed to get back, by the way, you will be seeing huge performance gains. And we've been doing PMax for 18 months now. So
Why are people not moving over?
it's mostly the idea that you're relinquishing control to machine learning and the algorithm. But our take is if relinquishing a degree of control gets you a 44% increase in ROAS, it's probably the best thing to do for performance.
100%.
And by probably, I mean definitely.
It's a bit like Advantage Plus or Meta, like it's Facebook's most sophisticated targeting tool, but it can be a little bit scary if you haven't used it before. But with capable hands, it's much more efficient than manual campaigns, so just got to take the plunge.
Gotta risk it for a chocolate biscuit.
Right, it's 3:01.
Mic drop.
On it like a car bonnet.
I've been trying.
I think that's
How much of that was talking about equine?
not much.
2 to 3 minutes.
We need to account for like 30% of the time going to equine. Moving forward.